I just flew back from Florida and boy are my ribs sore. What? Anyway, I've been doing tabletop stuff on YouTube for a shockingly long time now, actually. Uh, had a few attempts at different campaigns over the years in the past that had mixed results or terminated via logistical things or friend group stuff and whatnot. But more recently, we have a channel called Null Playing Games where we do these. We have a pretty fixed group, and we started off by doing tabletop campaigns in the style of a furry visual novel, and most recently with Shattered Grail, we're doing one that's kind of in the style of like Final Fantasy Tactics visually. Interesting thing having to have all these like visual aspects set up and running a show and trying to do tabletop with an audience, all while being somebody who like I'm not Critical Role. I'm not Brendan Lee Mulligan or any of these people. Brennan or Brendan? I think it's Brennan. I don't think there's a D. I don't even watch these shows, or I'd know his name better. So I'm not like a super big tabletop fanatic as far as like being plugged in, but I do quite enjoy doing it. And I've been blessed to have a sort of consistent group for the last few years for doing it with it. And as a result, I've kind of become a little bit of an authority on what can work at tabletop, at least sometimes, simply because tabletop is so difficult to do logistically, to actually get a group together and consistently do it, that the fact that I have done it for hundreds of hours now, even though I don't feel like I'm that amazing at it, does kind of mean that I have some insight to share at this point. And we were talking in Discord recently. I was talking with some of my audience members, and I wanted to actually spin that topic off into a video because I thought it was worth. I had an interesting thought that I wanted to get out in the moment before I lost it. So we're doing a little impromptu Fugi video with no camera because I'm still not really set up to film because my camera's glitched out or something. I don't know. And we're looking at a slideshow of fan art for Null Playing Games campaigns. That's our campaigns for Cape Escape, Dead Laws, Cape Escape 2, Golden Tongue, and Shattered Grail. I think that's all the ones, right? I think. So yeah, combination of memes and drawings of characters that I've played or people around me have played and so on. What I want to discuss here was just role-playing as a concept, and in particular, what I think people struggle with and what people have admitted they struggle with is that they don't really know how to role-play in a tabletop RPG because it's so different from playing an RPG video game. And I think one of the core issues there is that people don't role play it when they play role-playing games. Like when people play a video game like Baldur's Gate, they actually might do it in Baldur's Gate because it encourages it so much, but when people play a game like Mass Effect, for example, they don't really role play statistically. The vast majority of people who play video game RPGs, they enjoy making decisions. They enjoy making a character build. But as far as role-playing goes, they pretty much just project themselves into the game, and they try to play themselves the vast majority of the time, or some version of themselves, an idealized version of themselves, perhaps, a persona of themselves. And we know this because BioWare reported the data, and the vast majority of people who played Mass Effect 1, for example, did it as boringly as possible, which is they played as the default appearance Commander Shepard, male Shepard with the buzz cut and the little goatee, played by Mark Meir, I think. They played as the default class, which was just soldier, just guy with a gun, and you did have some abilities, but you didn't have any biotic abilities or tech abilities, which feels insane. It feels insane to me to play Mass Effect without any biotic abilities because that's like such a specific part of the setting, and also they were clearly doing a Star Wars, so like having access to force abilities just kind of seems integral to the whole thing. But most notably, they pretty much just chose Paragon options, which are the good cop options, because that was the game that tried to change things up a little bit, because BioWare's previous games had, they previously adapted Star Wars, so they had light and dark side, and that was more overtly good and evil. Mass Effect was not about being good or evil, it was about being nice or mean, basically. Like your protagonist, Commander Shepard, always had to be good, basically, because he was a space cop. But you could be a good cop or bad cop, essentially, which, false choice, am I right? But you know what I mean? Like you were either like trying to do the best by people while also accomplishing your long-term goals, or you were like callous and utilitarian and willing to do horrible things potentially in the moment that would accomplish your ultimate goal of saving the world and whatnot, or just being a dick, and so, or sometimes just letting your emotions let you just punch a reporter in the face that really tried your patience over the course of the sequels, and then that quick time event comes up and you're like, yeah, but what if I pressed it though? But yeah, the vast majority of people that played Mass Effect were just playing a good guy. And I think that the reason for that is because the vast majority of people who play they play video game RPGs, they do just play themselves. They basically go in there and they try to be good and they try to make good decisions, because frankly, I think that people are kind of inherently good. Like, people can be selfish. People can make decisions for their own benefit in the short term, but people are generally not really cruel. And when given a kind of like asymmetrical, unfair amount of information, like a video game character does, they often use that to make what they think is the smartest decision in the game, or the goodest decision for the world and the setting and the characters and so on. Because generally speaking, you don't really want to like make sympathetic characters cry and stuff like that. Just kind of an ongoing thing. And this is even true for the best RPGs in the world. Like Disco Elysium, the vast majority of players ended up as communist sorry cops, or sad cops? Sorry cops. I think it was sorry cops. The people that keep apologizing for everything. And that's because in Disco Elysium, you wake up as a drunk piece of shit garbage boy, where they try to project so hard, hey, you aren't you. You're Harry Dubois. You're so Harry Dubois that you don't even know that's his name yet. You have to figure out what his name is. Sorry if I technically spoiled something that's not a spoiler, because it's just not actually information that affects the story. It's just what his name is. You just don't know it, and then you know it eventually. So it's just an unlock, essentially. Not really a spoiler by any real definition. There's no reveal like, what? Harry? I heard about him. Oh, fuck, I'm him? It's not that kind of reveal. It's just a name. That Disco Elysium like took your head in its hands and screamed in your face, this guy's not you. You're not this guy. You're going to play him, but it's a role-playing game, so like do something with it. And we're all communist sorry cops anyway, including me. Admittedly, it's a really politicized, really political game, and I wanted to see where it would go with communists, because you don't get to see that storyline much in any mainstream narrative, so that's exciting. But again and again, just people constantly pick what are essentially the most sympathetic choices, or the most empathetic choices, or the most kind or egalitarian or justice-seeking choices. And there's drift there, and the best RPGs will force some level of split there, where amongst players you will end up disagreeing with what the good choice is. For example, people have argued to the ends of the earth about certain choices in Fallout New Vegas, and about whether or not this or that is actually the good choice amongst the options given. And that means your game is well written when you have at least some interesting stuff to break down. Notably, it's not the same thing as actually having necessarily moral ambiguity, or actually being unclear about something, but just being just the fact that the New Vegas and some games like that can accurately reproduce the disagreements we have in real life. But if you know what's right in real life is still right in the game, basically. Getting a little off topic here. So the question here is, how do you role play in a tabletop RPG when you've used to playing video games like Mass Effect, where you probably haven't really role played? Like, very rarely does somebody go into a game like Fallout. It happens. In fact, it's a lot of themed playthroughs online and so on. But most people that play Fallout 4, for example, do not write a character in advance, come up with a backstory for them, in part because these games don't allow you to have backstories, because they give you a fucking backstory, the dicks. But they rarely does somebody come up with a predetermined idea of like, here's what my weaknesses are going to be, and here's what my strengths are going to be, and here's my behavioral rules of like, I'll do these in these situations, and I won't do this. Like, I'm making a character that can't read. I'm just going to never read anything in this game and operate based on that information. People never do that in video games. I know that because I'm saying never, you're going to say I do, but I mean, like, statistically, that's not what people do with their video games. And that's a problem because when they try to play a tabletop RPG, which is what these games are all kind of emulating, and it's kind of the purest form of the thing, it's all about doing that. Like, I've been at tables where everyone's playing Commander Shepard at the same time, and it's really fucking boring. It's actually really just not great if everybody shows up to a tabletop session and they're just playing themselves, they're just being nice, and they're just making the best decision under the circumstances for what seems logical and normal for someone to do. There's not, that leads to a situation where there's little that actually contrasts the people at the table, and there's little conflict between the people at the table as far as characters go, but also there's just like not really a narrative that's going to play out that involves the characters very directly, unless you either A, have a bunch of lore to lean on and you're going to constantly bring that up, or the DM is extremely good at coming up with interesting things to challenge any kind of stuff that he sees sticking out about your group and starts leveraging that directly to force something to happen because you guys are being so boring. I think the vast majority of tabletop sessions where everyone is playing as Commander Shepard, they end up playing out like Diablo 2, essentially. Like, you end up playing D&D or whatever tabletop system you're playing like it's a loot system. And I've engaged, like, it's a series of dungeons where you move forward through rooms, check for traps, fight enemies that appear in front of you, eventually fight the big boss, loot bodies for loot, and so on. And like, I've had versions of this at different tables too, where people just fundamentally didn't understand tabletop. Like, I played Vampire the Masquerade, where the whole premise is that you're a vampire in the masquerade. You're supposed to hide that vampires exist from the human world, so you need to not be a vampire in front of non-vampires unless you're like stealth taking them down and, you know, no witnesses and whatnot. There's a whole secret vampire society. That's the basics of the game, and we supposedly knew that. But the moment we touched down in a like suburban neighborhood, my players that I was playing with started like breaching and clearing the surrounding suburban buildings, like walking up their lawns, going to their houses, murdering the people inside, and then checking for loot. And they did that over and over again, even though there was no loot and the people weren't fighting them and there wasn't really encounters happening. And they thought that I was being the spoil sport for staying outside and not getting involved. And it's like, y'all are breaking the masquerade. You're not thinking about the setting and what we're here to do. You're trying to play this like a level of Diablo 2. That's what it's like to play people with people that just know the video games and they don't really know what it's like to actually have agency, like pure agency, and actually be able to self-motivate and self-direct in a tabletop RPG. It's a very different change. But I'm taking too long to get to my point at this point. Obviously, and they probably titled this, my answer is to be a dick. Make a character that you kind of don't like on some level. Make a character that will do something that you specifically wouldn't do. Come up with the defining thing that makes your character different from you and really lean onto that. From there, you have a character motivation, and what you want to do is you want to just think about that character motivation above all else, and you want to think about what your character actually knows and how that relates to that character information. And from there, you just kind of be a little bastard. You just be a little bastard. You don't want to think about the macro story of all of the combined lore and information. You just want to think about what are the rules that are put on your character by you? What are the rules that are put on your character by the setting? What does your character want to do? And what won't they do? And just kind of like impulsively like push forward based on that information and kind of like enjoy the train wreck. Like, everyone likes rubbernecking at like when a car crash happens on the freeway and everyone stops and looks at that, or blah, 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 blah. Like, you enjoy the fact that the character you're playing is not you and you do not face the consequences for their actions as like a person in real life. And just enjoy the narrative irony. Enjoy the fact that you know that some of the decisions you're making will probably have consequences or probably aren't the smartest decision in the process, but they just make sense for your character to do. and then just see how that plays out. See how that story plays out, see how that scene plays out, and also enjoy how that character bounces off all of your other players with you that are hopefully doing something like that, but with different characters. That's how you get a party with contrasting personalities, and that is also like the basics of every ensemble cast television show you've ever watched, every anime and fantasy show and so on. You have a roster of characters, like 4 to 6 main characters that travel as a group, and those people have clashing personalities, and they kind of like, they're slightly flanderized, like they do a little bit to like reinforce, like, this is my personality trait, I'm snooty, or I'm a clean freak, or I'm an impulsive guy that breaks things and so on. And it's not about having the most always correct and always sympathetic, most moral character, but instead having a bunch of contrasting characters that are the particular kind of archetype you feel like exploring, and then seeing how those can bounce off of each other, what kind of scenarios those can cause, and then over the course of the story, seeing what kind of depth you can pull from that character over the course of that playthrough. To look at my own characters that I've had so far on role-playing games, the big one is Jet. I've played Jet for 2 seasons now. In the first season, we're in like a Mr. Beast escape room video filming set thing that becomes Silent Hill. So we're in an old west town that gets haunted essentially. I decided that Jet's deal was going to be that he can't tell what's happening. So he can't see the supernatural stuff for some reason that everyone else is reacting to. So as things are gradually getting worse, he's not going to be reacting to it properly, and everyone else is. And it's going to be this sort of like direct like contrast and conflict there. There's going to be comedy you can mine from that, from him being like, what are you guys doing in various situations, and trying to have him try to think of ways that he interprets the actions of the other players based on his lack of knowledge and lack of perception, acting as if they're doing these actions in a normal setting, for example. He's kind of like a no-nonsense, kind of rude but capable character. His whole deal is that he's sort of the handyman, essentially. And he's been he's like this like labor man. I don't know if I'm trying to think of I'm blanking on the terminology exactly, but he's essentially like a blue collar worker employed by this particular group, and he's just here to get through his shift that was put on him when he thought he was going home. So he doesn't want to be here, and he's just getting through it. And he's like, I gotta babysit these fucking influencers because they're all YouTubers and whatnot. And he's just getting through that. And that's just like fun, like getting in that headspace of this guy that does not know he's in a horror movie, and enjoying exploring why that character is written so often. Because it is like interesting to we all have like yelled at the screen a little bit at the lack of genre awareness of somebody in a horror movie, but it's because they don't know they're in a horror movie. And it's actually fun to play a character who doesn't know they're in a horror movie and trying to think in real time, like, has he hit the point yet where he knows he's in a horror movie? What is the breaking point there? When will something finally like make him register this? And then at that point, how will his behavior change? And so that was fun, because then I had very specific shift where once he knows he's in a horror movie, he has a very specific thing that he cares about, which is another person in the setting. And so he's going to try to figure out where that person is and whether or not he's safe the moment he knows there's actually danger afoot. And his motivations kind of flip, and he goes from being a very passive character that kind of gives everyone else space to play around and explore their characters, to being a very active character that to some extent kind of drives the plot forward and is kind of making the decisions of where to go next in real time, after having just being the person who follows people around for the first half so far. That's a lot of fun. I do all this while being somebody who doesn't think I'm very good at role playing, and also in particular, I've always struggled with improvising dialogue. I really struggle to quip and react in the moment, which is funny because I kind of do that for a living. Like I do commentary for a living. I talk off the cuff constantly. I'm currently doing this as a 20-minute unbroken thing where I don't think I've even had a single gap long enough there where I'm like, oh, I got to go back and edit that or anything like that. And I constantly, like, I have kind of honed my ability to say little jokes or have little comments that mine in comedy from stuff at my job. And it seems to be something I'm fairly good at because I go out and have dinner with a bunch of strangers with one friend, and I will have comments that genuinely fuck people up and like cause a bit of an uproar at the table. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I guess I am kind of funny. Damn. But then I play tabletop and I'm constantly stalling and freezing. So like, I get it. It's hard to improvise dialogue as someone else and think of what they would say and hold a conversation as someone else. And so it constantly helps to just think about your rules. What defines this character and what specifically contrasts them to you? What makes them specifically different from you? And how would that kind of conversation go? And you can view it in a number of ways, even like you're straw manning, essentially. Like you're building a straw man idea of a different person, and then like, that's what they would talk like. Do that if you want, because that could be the character. Is this concept of that? But yeah, Jet came back in season 2 of Cape Escape, and at that point, it was another case of a real simple motivation where his husband was in prison and the prison was getting Silent Hilled. So he's like, well, I have a very simple motivation. My goal is to find out where he is and then get to him as quickly as possible. So the only barriers between me and my goal are A, knowledge. Does he know where to go? And B, doors. Does he have the means to get where he needs to go? He became a door kicker that playthrough because I kept doing really well at roles that were meant to specifically get me where I needed to go, even through locked doors and whatnot. And so it was to the DM's folly that I gained the information I needed as early as I did, because I started just beelining straight towards my goal, and that became sort of my defining focus of my character, which is a lot of fun. Did have to shuffle the narrative around because I kind of Mr. Drilled a little too close to the sun, but it was all fine. Was it Argo was a character where we were in an Old West setting, and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if the town's hero was a fraud, basically? Like there's always like this idea of like there being like the local cowboy that deals with the vagabonds and whatnot. But like, what if this was just kind of like a boring town and not that much had gone wrong here? And so instead, my protagonist had decided to be like a Gilderoy Lockhart from Harry Potter's second book, like the fraud in that one, where he essentially was taking credit for things that didn't actually happen or even orchestrating false scenarios. So I had this idea that he essentially does like stage plays out in the wilderness surrounding the town that reenact the idea of him doing heroics, but everyone involved is basically like a paid actor, and he's just like role playing at being a cowboy so that he can like socially benefit from being the local hero, and sort of just skate by on that instead of having to do real work and whatnot. And then of course that was a character I know that I'm crafting for a tabletop RPG, where things are going to happen. So inevitably I'm making a character who is designed to get called out and fail with a narrative, because the narrative is then going to be like, well, it's time for actual heroics. And then your protagonist is going to be like, oh, well, I don't have any actual skills, so this is a problem for me. And having to deal with that character was a lot of fun. A character that kind of like specifically was refusing the call to action and trying to avoid, like he was the supposed hero of Southpaw, but then he was refusing the call to action in the hero's journey. And then he was kind of like having to react to everybody else taking up the reins around him, and the story shifting there. Like, it is very fun to dwell on a specific character, inhabit that character, and explore why he kind of sucks. And then you see whether or not he like gets better or not. But like, it's important to commit to their flaws instead of just like identifying that he is in the wrong and then just changing that immediately, because that's not how people work and so on. And it's also you'll lose your contrast to everybody. We also did a Patreon exclusive / channel member exclusive series called The Golden Tongue, where I just played an actual bastard. Grin was a Fossa who is just a hitman. He's like a gutter rat hitman that will just kill for money, and then he'll just spend the money immediately on any carnal pleasures that he desires, and just kind of cycles through those two things. Just complete. He's like the most logical, extreme version of these idea of playing versions of characters like Jet, where it's like an impulsive person that's just dealing with whatever's in front of them. I took them, that's what's most extreme, where there's just a character who just pursues whatever his desires are, and then does whatever ruthless thing it takes to enable that lifestyle, and then just kind of loops through those two behaviors while under the assumption that he's going to have a short life, and he's just living it up now, essentially, when he's assuming that he'll die tomorrow, which itself was motivated by the fact that we were playing Blades of the Dark, a series that is a game system that is specifically all about those kinds of immediate consequences. Like, every action you take gives you stress, and if you build up your stress to a full meter, you take a trauma, and if you take X number of traumas on your character, then he is permanently retired. And so just this very act of taking actions accelerates your character towards their own retirement. So as I looked at that rule set and just made a character that encouraged those rules to actually take place, instead of trying to be like the smartest, most logical boy. And it leads to a lot of fun scenarios. In particular, I really relish the fact when I'm playing as Jet or Grin, there's moments where I know that they're going to want to do something in a situation that is explicitly the worst thing you could do in that situation. And in moments like that, I'm like, oh, that's so exciting, because I get to be the guy that fucks this up. I get to be the guy who makes this whole scenario way worse, and that scenario getting worse is a much better scene. Like, there's a part where there was spores coming out of this computer, and agitating it clearly makes the spores come out when I was playing as Jet. And any logical person's like, well, that's bad, we should better watch out for that. But the thing on the computer was Jet's husband being experimented on, so he's incensed and upset and not thinking straight. So he's just pissed off with this fucking computer and like shaking it and trying to get what he can out of it and things, which actively made everything worse, which led to everyone being knocked unconscious and having dream sequences where we explore elements of their backstory or what makes them tick and so on like that. And it's just like, oh yeah, we got to have the exciting thing happen. We got to have the consequences. And it's because my character wouldn't want to deal with this, like wouldn't be emotionally ready to deal with this scenario. And there's been like a variety of scenarios like that. I really enjoyed the completely absurd like priest interrogation scene I had with Grin, because my guy had a very utilitarian problem where he had to solve being haunted by a ghost. And he's like, well, I am in a church, so what if I just go straight to the priests over this, even though it means basically confessing to murder? What could possibly go wrong there? And having those kind of scenes play out. This season I'm playing as Valerian, who we have not unpacked yet, so I'm not going to get too deep into his thing. But even there, like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to play a guy who's just explicitly a dick. None of my characters have been in a dick in quite this way, where Valerian is specifically going to be the character who has constant friction with the other characters verbally. There's been versions of that because I've had disagreements with other characters as other people in the party in the previous runs. but they're not like hostile to the party necessarily. But Valerian is specifically like going to be in sort of like a Vegeta role where he specifically thinks of himself as separate and above the other party members and doesn't really respect them in the most direct way. And so he's going to be actively prodding for conflict, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And you got to be careful. You're not trying to be like actually a dick to the other players in a real way, but instead like you're finding out how your character would be in conflict with the other characters in the story and only in the story. These are all different variations of the idea. It's just this has been my sort of philosophy, is just be a little bastard. Come up with something that's wrong with your character, something that's frustrating about your character, or something that complicates their interactions with the story or limits their ability to just make the most logical, soundest, most boringest decision, where they're just a milquetoast, agreeable, polite character that only does the most logical thing and always shares their resources and always helps the party. And because like that, when you're behaving like that, you're more likely to metagame. You're more likely to make decisions that are the most tactically sound combat decision based on your meta knowledge of you understanding that you're playing an RPG and that other people have health bars and stuff like that. But you'll be behaving like a bot, almost like just an optimized cog, and not as an agent in a story that makes interesting stories happen. And I think generally speaking that if you play a character that's going to help make an interesting story, you're going to have a story that people are overall more grateful that they had the chance to experience together. And you're going to have more memories from the thing that you did and the story that you played together. Obviously, read the room. No piece of advice is universally good for any tabletop group. Every table that you're physically sitting at, no matter what you think conventional wisdom is, and no matter how many YouTube videos you've watched that tell you how to play tabletop, on some level you always have to be socially aware of the fact that you are sitting at a table with these specific 4 people or whatever, and that's just the reality of the room you're in. So like, what makes them tick? What do they think of, what do they value and not value? What kind of stuff are they gonna like? Are they gonna like yes and with and be receptive to, and what kind of stuff are they going to be actively offended by, and so on. There's a reason why many tabletop groups fail, probably most of them, and it's because you're trying to take a social group and bring them together and have them all get along and agree to meet up week to week and enjoy it every week. And also, you're probably like, some of you are really good friends, but some of the people are like that guy's friend and not so much your friend directly. And you're all feeling each other's personalities out while learning to play a complicated game you don't necessarily super know, while iterating on a one-of-a-kind story that you've never played before, because that's the appeal of every tabletop game, is that it's never the same ever. And trying to do all that together in those constraints is a bit stressful. It's also stressful doing it the way I do it, which is doing it as a YouTube show, where when you're streaming, 200 people are watching, and like 1,000 or 3,000 people are going to eventually watch the video later when it comes out. And so you're trying to make a good show and hoping that the whole thing like has arcs and satisfying progression and pacing, and it's just entertaining moment to moment, while also being a satisfying story in the long term, while knowing that you don't get to write the story because it's all improvised, not only just by you, but everyone else at the table. And to do that, oh God, first you need the production value to have a presentable thing on the screen, obviously, but you also need to have like a DM and a series of players that all can just kind of like trust each other, that everyone kind of has not only just like a plan for their particular character and where that's going to be going, or like, and I don't mean like as that isn't like a written thing, but as in like, you know, like a trajectory that they have in mind, and that can be complicated or contradicted, but they like, you know, the idea that people are thinking about this stuff, and that everyone has the right like instincts, essentially, almost like the improv chops. Like, do people have the self-awareness to think about how their character presents and how that mixes with every other person at the table, and whether or not everyone's having a good time, and whether or not they're speaking as frequently as they should, but not too frequently that they're stepping on other people's opportunities to have storytelling moments and so on. There's a lot you can talk about. Let me know if you want me to just keep talking about tabletop stuff. I have a lot of other topics I could potentially get into with this stuff, because it's just a lot of fun to talk about. But in the meantime, yeah, I guess this is kind of like an extended ad for Noel playing games. So check out, via the link in the description, my tabletop RPG channel, where we're currently doing a JRPG style playthrough of a new campaign that Ka has designed for us. And if you go through our backlog, you can watch multiple seasons of previous playthroughs that we've done over the last like 2 years, I think. It's an exciting time. It's always a very exciting time when we're in the middle of doing these playthroughs. I get a bit less done because I'm thinking about the campaign so much. So if you're sad that stuff isn't being made for other channels, then check out the channel where it is being made on, because it's over there. And yeah, I know that I'm siloed to a billion channels, but that is the best way to handle these different kinds of content. It would be really weird to like have my vlogs and my Let's Plays and my tabletop campaigns and my video essays all on the same channel, especially when the video essays only come out once every 6 months, and a campaign of Noel playing games only happens once every like 6 months or 8 months, and then the Let's Plays happen several times a day, and this particular channel can upload every week, or like when I'm actually committing to it properly at least. Sorry, things have been chaotic, and I've been moving, and I went to a convention again. I'm traveling again in a few weeks again. I'm doing this channel. I am trying to get some video essays done, hopefully, in the near future, particularly because I have a couple of really short ideas, and I think I want to experiment with making a few really short videos for the video essay channel, because I could do with having an actual library of content instead of having one extremely long video every like 8 months. But things have just not kind of gone quite to plan on the video essay channel in this year. Going into it, I was on kind of a mission to make a video every other month and have 6 videos done by the end of the year. And on some level that might have been obtainable, but my particular style of writing, the standards I hold myself to, and the way that my topics tend to bloat has just made it messy when I then have to pivot to running my Let's Play channel and just kind of doing, you know, my job that actually pays the rent, because the video essays don't do that. Although they might someday. On that topic, views are scary lately. Things have just been kind of upsetting. It does feel like the YouTube algorithm functionally just turned off my Let's Play channel. Viewership is plummeting. Subscribers are basically at less than 0 per month. Like, instead of, once upon a time I used to gain 1,000 subscribers a month, right now I am gaining 0 to 50, and there's a lot of days where I lose subscribers, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, this is unprecedented. I've never seen numbers like this, and it's weird because I just did not recently make a change that matches up with the timeline of when these stats are changing. So it seems to just be that YouTube is changing in a frustrating way again, which makes sense because they're like rolling out AI dubbing on our voices. When if your primary language isn't English, then videos are just automatically dubbed in your language via a shitty AI voice that doesn't differentiate between different voices for shit. And it will do that even if you speak English also, because it doesn't know. YouTube doesn't think bilingual people exist, which is funny because so much of the if English is not your first language and you're in the larger world, there's a very high chance that it is that you do still speak English on some level. And in particular, the primary affected people by this content, I feel like, are going to be people who are watching English-speaking channels already, which implies they already can speak English enough to understand the content in its native tongue, and they're going to be flashbanged by a garbage AI translation instead of the real voices, because YouTube condescendingly doesn't think that they can understand the language of the channel that they were already watching on purpose anyway. Very strange behavior. Definitely different ways they can handle this. I hope they change it again. But the fact that they're making such radical changes here and there, and also implementing a lot of AI stuff in general, does kind of point to the idea that the algorithm probably has shifted in some way too, which is just frustrating. For now, I'm just going to ride things out with my 4 channels: Noel Playing Games, Boring Threeth, Boring Keith, and Keith Ballard, the gaming channel. And I'm just going to feel it out and just try to keep it going. I just need to get back to both this channel and the Video Essay channel and give them both a chance to grow, and just hope that at least one of these channels can carry me forward professionally. I have savings for now, so it's not like I'm going to have a bad month and immediately miss rent and then have to quit my job and apply for jobs elsewhere and so on. I'll be fine for a while. But it is nerve-wracking when it used to be that I was consistently growing and I was looking forward to making more money each year by some margin, and now the future's much less certain. But in the meantime, check out my fun tabletop channel, because sometimes people do just make stuff for fun. Noel Playing Games is like the favorite thing of most of the people that are working on it right now, and it's not really a thing that any of us really expect to ever turn a profit. It kind of just skates by on generating just enough money to pay for the art that goes into the next season, and just like justifying its own existence on that level, and being a fun thing we all get to have together. So focusing on that in the short term. The world's scary and chaotic, and there's a lot of things to stress out over. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought of this one, and if you'd like to have if you have other questions about tabletop stuff that you'd like me to point at more, since I've been doing so much of it lately. I don't think I'm that good at it, but I also do think I have way more experience with it than a lot of people do, so I can probably say something about it. And we'll see going forward if I can figure out my stupid webcam situation. I'm just really stuck dealing with so many other things too that I just haven't had the time to focus on it. Or let me know if you guys, I don't know, we'll see based on the performance of these videos. Maybe you guys like Foogies. Maybe I'll set up a VTuber. Maybe I will set up VR chat and talk as a VR chat furry avatar in VR chat when I talk. I don't know, man. This whole channel's completely experimental and will eventually fall into some kind of unifying aesthetic probably, but whatever it is, it's not going to be what I previously had, because I physically moved into a new house. So at the very least, my background will be different if I set up video again. I'll see you guys next time. This outro is too long.